Hi guys, welcome to my channel. What am I going to share is about the history, the Third Philippine Republic. The Philippines after the war or the World War II. When the Second World War ended in 1945, the Philippines was greatly devastated. Buildings and infrastructure in the country were damaged. The railways were out of operation, roads and bridges were destroyed, and businesses were at a standstill. Poverty was widespread, and the peace and order situated got worse. Recovery was the foremost task, but the people and the government had no money for the rehabilitation of the country. The birth of the Philippine Republic. The United States officially proclaimed the independence of the Philippines in a ceremony held in Manila on July 4, 1946. On that day, the Philippine flag was raised and the American flag was lowered. It signaled the end of the American rule in the Philippines and the start of the Third Philippine Republic. Following the conditions provided in the 1935 Philippine Constitution, the Commonwealth government was dissolved and replaced by the new government called the Philippine Republic. The Philippine government created in 1946 was presidential and democratic in form. It was created by authority of the 1935 Constitution, which declared that number 1, the Philippines is a republican state. Number 2, this government shall have three equal but independent branches: the executive, wherein headed by the president and the cabinet members; then legislative, headed by the Senate and the House of Representatives; and the judicial, headed by the Supreme Court or the Justice. An executive branch shall be headed by the President, who shall hold office for 4 years. No one should serve as president for more than 8 consecutive years. The president shall be commander-in-chief of all armed forces of the Philippines. The legislative branch of government, called Congress, shall be composed of a Senate and a House Representative. The Senate shall be composed of 24 senators who will each serve a 6-year term of the office. The House of Representatives shall be composed of not more than 120 members, each representing a province or a district, and shall each serve a 4-year term of office. The Senate shall be headed by the Senate President and the House of Representatives by the Speaker, and the judicial branch of the government shall be the Supreme Court, and it shall be composed of a Chief Justice and 10 Associate Justices. Coat of Arms of the Philippine Republic. The coat of arms of the Philippine Republic shows the same elements that can be found in the national flag. It has the 3 stars that represents the 3 major island groups that comprise our archipelago: Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. It also features a sun with 8 rays, which symbolize the first 8 provinces that revolted against the Spain during 1896 revolution. The bald eagle, which represents the United States of America, is placed on the blue flag on the left side, and a lion, which represents Spain, in place on the red flag on the right side. Both the eagle and the lion represents our colonial heritage. The words Republika ng Pilipinas are written and scrolled below on the top symbol. The coat of arms of the Philippines is used in official government documents. It was approved on July 3, 1946 through Commonwealth Act number 731. The administration of Manuel Rojas from 1946 to 1948. Manuel Rojas was Senate President when he won the presidency in 1946. His victory made him the last president of the Commonwealth government and the first president of the Third Republic of the Philippines. When Manuel Rojas assumed the presidency, the Philippines needed to be rehabilitated because the government had no money. They sought the support of US government. The United States agreed to provide financial aid to the Philippines, but in exchange, the Philippines must accept the Bell Trade Act and the Tidings Rehabilitation Act. Both laws contain disadvantageous provisions for the Philippines. Bell Trade Act and Tidings Rehabilitation Act. The Bell Trade Act of the Philippine Trade Act was passed by the Philippine Congress on July 2, 1946. This act stipulated that the free trade agreement between the United States of America and the Philippines would be continue until 1954. It also gave the Americans parity rights or equal economic rights with regards to the use and exploitation of the Philippine natural resources. Although this provision violated the mandate of the 1935 Constitution, which reserves such rights only to the Filipinos, the Philippine government had to accept the law. The non-approval of the Bell Trade Act meant the cancellation of American financial aid to the country. Only the passage of the Bell Trade Act in the Philippines secured the Tidings Rehabilitation Act or the Tidings War Damage Act. The Rehabilitation Act appropriated $620 million for the rehabilitation of the Philippines. Because the Bell Trade Act was against Philippine interests, it creates the rift in the national politics. Many patriotic Filipino leaders strongly opposed the law. However, the pressure exerted by the U.S. government forced President Rojas to support the Bell Trade Act. His allies in Congress successfully amended the Philippine Constitution to adopt the parity clause contained in the act. Through a plebiscite held in March 11, 1947, the Parity Rights Amendment was approved in the Philippines. Nonetheless, the negative impact of the Bell Trade Act to Philippine economy was felt in 1950. The law discouraged the establishment of local industries and the struggling Philippine economy further declined. U.S. military bases. Since the creation of the Philippine Republic, American influence continued to define key decisions in the government. In March 1947, President Manuel Rojas entered into another agreement with the United States. He signed the USRP Military Bases Agreement, which allowed the Americans to control 23 military installations in the country, including Clark Airfield. But now it's already Clark Airport. These military bases were established to house American troops and safeguard the interests of the United States in the Philippines and Asia. This is the picture of the Clark Air Force Base. Hukbalahap Rebellion. After the end of the Second World War, the United States turned against the Hukbalahap Hukbo ng Bayan laban sa Hapon for its socialistic and anti-American ideology. The Philippine government disregarded the contribution of the Huk guerrillas during the war and disqualified them from any compensation. The government also ordered the Huk-Balahap guerrillas to disarm themselves. While many guerrillas complied and surrendered their weapons, others hid their arms and stayed in the mountains. Supremo Luis Taruk and other guerrilla leaders soon joined politics and ran for Congress in the 1946 elections. Luis Taruk and 5 of the Huk members of the Democratic Alliance won congressional seats, but they were blocked from assuming office. Thus, they were forced to go underground and fight against the Americans and the government. From being an anti-Japanese force, the Huk Balahap transformed into rebel movement. It also changes its name to Hukbong Mapagpalaya ng Bayan or HMB. It later grew in strength and found mass support in the countryside. The lack of attention from the government pushed many poor peasants to join the Hooks. The Hook Rebellion caught the government's full attention when the rebels started to launch attacks against landlords and government forces. In March 1948, President Rojas outlawed the Hooks and ordered massive military campaigns against them. He also tried to address the agrarian issues, which were the root of the rebellion. Nevertheless, he failed. The rebels' movement remained strong, and the Hook Rebellion became one of the biggest challenges faced by the government. On April 15, 1948, just 2 years since he assumed office, President Rojas died of a heart attack. The administration of Elpidio Quirino from 1948 to 1953. President Elpidio Quirino was one of the politicians who sided with President Quezon during the controversy regarding the Hari Hawes Cutting Act. He also refused to have position in Jose P. Laurel's government during the Japanese occupation. In 1946, at the inauguration of the Third Philippine Republic, he was elected Vice President and appointed Secretary of Foreign Affairs. On April 17, 1948, just 2 days after the death of President Manuel Rojas, Vice President Elpidio Quirino formally assumed the presidency. He promised to promote economic stability, maintain peace and order, and bring back the people's trust in the government. Negotiation with the Hooks. President Quirino inherited the Hukbala problem, but unlike President Rojas, he adopted a more peaceful approach in dealing with the Hooks. He offered amnesty to all rebels who would surrender within 50 days. This amnesty bargain was made official when he signed Proclamation Number 76 on June 21, 1948. However, on the last day of surrender, hostilities broke out once again. Despite the efforts of Quirino administration, it was unable to solve the Hook Rebellion. Foreign exchange control, which Belt Trade Act in effect tons of cheap imported American goods entered the Philippines. The country's dollar reserve was mismanaged and is spent primarily on the purchase of luxury goods. This resulted in the depletion of the country's money supply. President Quirino's Finance Secretary Miguel Cuaderno, Sr., recognized the problem and thought that the solution was the imposition of foreign exchange control. The American government initially did not agree with this, but situation was so bad that the Americans had to accept the policy plan. After foreign exchange control was implemented, local industries flourished. This encouraged many Filipinos to manufacture goods instead of buying everything from America. As a result of the country developed several industries which produce important commodities such as flour, textile, oil, chemicals, and glass. RPUS Mutual Defense Treaty. During the 1950s, communism was gradually spreading among the countries in Asia. Communist revolt toppled governments and installed communist rule in countries such as China and North Korea. Recognizing the external threat of communism, President Quirino signed RPUS Mutual Defense Treaty on August 30, 1951. This treaty obligated both countries to support each other against any external armed attack from the enemy. Although at first glance it appeared fair, Critics said that the treaty gave the assurance that the United States would declare war on the enemy of the Philippines should there be any. Nonetheless, when the United States got involved, in the war in Korea, the Philippine government was obligated by the treaty to send army contingent. Throughout his term, President Quirino was handed by critics for his lack of firm hand when it came to cases of grabs and corruption allegedly committed by members of his party. He was also attacked for his failure to address the needs of the working class and tolerating the anomalies in his cabinet. At the end of this term in 1953, he ran for re-election but lost to Ramon Magsaysay. The administration of Ramon Magsaysay from 1953 to 1957. Ramon Magsaysay was a guerrilla fighter during the Second World War. After the Philippines was liberated from the Japanese, the Americans appointed him as military governor in Zambales. He later became a member of Congress. On September 1, 1950, upon the urging of President Quirino's American advisors, Magsaysay was appointed as Secretary of National Defense. After he assumed the post, he became instrumental in ending the Hukbalahap Rebellion. Groomed for presidency, his image as a man of action won the hearts of the masses. In 1953, Ramon Magsaysay left the Liberal Party, and resigned from Presidential Quirino's cabinet. He ran in the presidential election under the Nacionalista Party. On November 10, 1953, he won the presidential race against President Quirino in a landslide victory. Proper policy. Upon assuming office, Magsaysay worked on his promise to improve the life of the people in the far-flung barrios of the country. His charismatic personality helped him win support for his nation-building programs. President Magsaysay's policy entered the following improvement of the land tenure system. Easy term, credit for peasants and intensive community development emphasizing self-sufficiency. End of the Huk Rebellion. President Magsaysay prominence reacted even greater heights when the successfully ended the Huk Rebellion. He started battling the insurgency by implementing changes in the Philippine constabulary. He recruited new soldiers and improved the lives of demoralized and politics-ridden Philippine Army. He gave the soldiers better quarters, good food, and better salaries. He also formed the Scout Ranger Battalion and group of soldiers who were specially trained to suppress the Hukbalahap rebel. The President Magsaysay campaign against, I show you already. And then the President Magsaysay campaign, the Hooks as well founded aside from the American financial and military aid. He also received contributions from rich landlords. He used some of its reward money for anyone with information that may lead to the capture of the Hook leaders. Later, this strategy proved to be successful. It need not to take much time until Many top leaders and the members of the Huk and the Communist Party of the Philippines were captured and convinced. The surrender of the Huk Supremo Luis Taruk struck the biggest blow in the rebel movement. The lack of able leadership finally ended the Hukbalahap rebellion. To support the rebel returnees, the Magsaysay government loaned them money to start small business. They also received free vocational training through the Economic Development Corporation, and communities from the former rebels were also reestablished in Isabela and Mindanao. Laurel-Langley Agreement. When the economy declined in the 1950, the Magsaysay government realized that the disadvantages brought by the Bell Trade Act to the Philippines. President Magsaysay renegotiated the act and came up with the Laurel-Langley Trade Agreement in 1955. Laurel-Langley Trade Agreement abolished the authority of the United States to control the exchange rate of peso. It also made parity privileges reciprocal, making it fairer. It extended the sugar quota, of time period for the reduction of other quotas and the progressive application of the tariffs on Philippine export to the United States. To help workers, President Magsaysay ordered the establishment of social security system. Under this system, business owners were required to register their employees so that they will be entitled to some benefits and privileges. Business owners had a share in the payment of SSS dues. The SSS ensured that workers will receive benefit in the form of medical aid, housing loan, calamity loan, and other similar types of assistance. To further empower the Filipino workers, President Magsaysay also implemented the Magna Carta of Labor, which stipulated the rights, benefits, and duties of workers. Among these was the right to organize a union in the state's strike. As a close ally of the United States in the Asia-Pacific region, the Philippines supported the worldwide condemnation of communism in the 1950s. President Magsaysay made clear the Philippine position against the communist regimes when helped and organized the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. It was established in Manila on September 8, 1954 and joined the 8 democratic nations. The aim of this organization was to dissolve democracy and stop the rising tide of communism in Asia. The member of the countries of the SEATO were the United States of America, United Kingdom, France, Australia, New Zealand, Pakistan, Philippines, and Thailand. On March 17, 1957, the C-47 presidential plane, Mount Pinatubo, which carried Magsaysay on board, crashed into the mountainside near Cebu City. The accident killed Magsaysay and 25 other people. Only one person survived. The administration of Carlos P. Garcia from 1957 to 1961. Carlos P. Garcia was a seasoned politician who started his political career in 1920s. He was also the vice president of Nacionalista Party in 1947 to 1953. He served as congressman, governor, and senador before he became last president of the Philippines alongside President Magsaysay in 1953. So that's all. Thank you very much. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell or bell all for more updates and more videos. Thank you for watching.